Hey guys, RanterInShades here, exercise my first amendment rights vlog style, and it's time for an episode of What's Wrong With.
What's wrong with me? You wanna know what's wrong with me? I can ask you the exact same thing. What's wrong with me?
I know by the title of this What's Wrong With video here, you probably have some confused looks, you're making some deranged looks, thinking, Shades, why the fuck would you make a What's Wrong With about Kiss? Haven't you heard the stupid shit Gene Simmons has been saying as of late? That is something I'm going to be addressing in the next video that I make after this. But before I do that, I figure, why not? Let's make a What's Wrong With about Kiss before I do that, because I've been meaning to make a What's Wrong With about Kiss, and I just figure, I might as well, get the positives out of the way before jumping right into a cesspool of negativity, for lack of a better term, in the next video. And other than that, I've just been meaning to make a What's Wrong With about Kiss for the longest time. Kiss was one of the first favorite hard rock bands that I remember getting into way back when. Regardless of whatever my opinion of Gene Simmons is at the moment, I still like Kiss's music. I still think it's good hard rock. It's good for hard rock. That's one of the best things about it. It doesn't try hard to, be too over the top, try to be something that it really isn't, try to be something it can't exactly pull off or anything. It doesn't try to, go too far out there musically. And that's what, makes it good for hard rock. The guitar work is also something that I think is pretty good. Kiss has had some good lead guitarists throughout their career, whether it be Ace Frehley, whether it be the next guitarist they had after Ace Frehley when he left, Vinnie Vincent. He was an excellent player. Vinnie Vincent, in the early 80s, but like 1982, 1983, for their album Lick It Up, he basically helped bring Kiss back into the spotlight. But after that, he decided that, Kiss was kind of holding him back musically, so he left and started his own band, the Vinnie Vincent Invasion, and I highly recommend you check them out if you're a fan of really insane, over-the-top guitar playing. It's really good glam metal, and I highly recommend if you're a fan of really guitar playing to check Vinnie Vincent Invasion out. They're very short-lived, but it's well worth it. Bruce Kulick is also a good guitar player, the guitarist that they had for like the second half of the 80s into the early 90s, and Tommy Thayer, their current guitarist, he's also pretty good. He was good in Black and Blue, the band that he was in before Kiss, and, he's still a good player. Kiss has had some good lead guitar players. As far as the other instruments go, the bass, the drums, it's nothing too complex, but in hard rock it doesn't really need to be too complex, because, the moment you try to be too over the top, you're basically upstaging the band, and that's something you really don't want to do if you're playing in a rock band. Now, if you ask me what my favorite album is of Kiss's, I would definitely say Creatures of the Night. Creatures of the Night is a really underrated album. It came out in 1982, a time when Kiss was sort of coming out of a major slump. Between 1979 and 1981, they were releasing some pretty mediocre material. Fucking I Was Made for Lovin' You. Not really my thing. And then fucking Unmasked and The Elder. Not great of albums, but 1982 with Creatures of the Night, they really brought themselves around. It's heavy, it's loud, it's awesome. When most people say they don't like Kiss, I always ask them if they've ever listened to anything from Creatures of the Night. Namely the title track. That is a really anthemic and heavy piece of work. And it's something I highly recommend that people listen to. And that's what really sells me on, Kiss as far as, their technicality goes. It's a good album, and it's really underrated for what it's worth. Then, come 1983, when they got Vinnie Vincent in the band, like I was saying earlier, they came out with Lick It Up, and Kiss is, back in the spotlight again. And everybody lived happily ever after. Other than that, Kiss have released some pretty good albums from the beginning of their career until Revenge in 1992. That's when I cut off Revenge, that was the last good album that they'd done. That's also a pretty good album. that's basically where I draw the line as far as the albums that I like. But it's still a large collection of albums between 1974 and 1992. That's almost 20 years. Another thing I like about Kiss is their live show. As you can see, I'm wearing a shirt. I'm not sure how this will look on the camera. But, you know, Kiss up here, Def Leppard down here. This is a really nice concert shirt. It was a cool show, and although I think Def Leppard's set was a lot better and a lot more entertaining, Kiss still put on a really excellent performance. The stage show is really cool. Lots of the visuals were really nice. The way they interacted with the audience, that was alright. They were funny and whatnot. They did an alright job. They did a really good job in their live set. And, you know, from what I've read about their live shows from, you know, back in the day, it was just all over the place. So if I had been around back then, I would have loved to see a Kiss show, you know, back in like the 70s. So those are the main things I like about Kiss. It's good time hard rock, basically the way hard rock is really, for lack of a better term, supposed to be done. They pretty much have all the necessary tools for songwriting and instrumentation when it comes to hard rock in the 70s and 80s, and that's really everything I like about Kiss. Now let's get to debunking the flack. One of the main things that I hear about Kiss's music when people are bashing it is that it's too simplistic. And what usually goes through my mind when I see people arguing that is, it's hard rock. What the hell else do you expect? You know, are you expecting an over-the-top fucking crazy fucking metal opera? I mean, Kiss isn't exactly a band that, you know, musically is supposed to be taken all that seriously, but, you know, it's hard rock. It's nothing too over-the-top. It's basically the way hard rock pretty much always is. So, if it's too simplistic, you know, it's hard rock. What else do you expect? I'm sorry if it sounds like I'm making excuses, but it's hard rock. Another common complaint is about the lyrics, how it's corny and cheesy and all that. Again, it's hard rock. I mean, one of the, you know, not one of the principal themes of hard rock, as far as, you know, the lyrics go, it's all sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And Kiss totally specialized in, you know, writing about those things. Maybe a good argument would be it's a bit recycled considering how many albums they've released, and I guess that's an agreeable point, but again, it's hard rock. Sometimes they can, you know, break out of their comfort zone if they're writing a song like Reason to Live. You know, that has a good message, some pretty, you know, deep lyrics, but for the most part, when it comes to the sex, drugs, and rock and roll writing, it's hard rock. They all wrote about sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Almost every rock band from that time period that wasn't, you know, a progressive rock band or a punk band, every hard rock band from that time period, and, you know, metal too from that time period. It was all about the fucking sex, drugs, and rock and roll. The next complaint I usually hear is, are complaining about how the gimmick, the makeup, and the merchandise. What does that have to do with music? Just because they can market themselves really well, that diminishes the quality of their music? How does that make sense? You know, that's just like the people that think that, you know, making fun of a band because of the way they look correlates to the music. It doesn't. Who cares if they fucking wear the makeup? Who cares if they, you know, have a bunch of merchandise with their faces on it? You know, are they random products? Sure. I'm sure if I do a simple Google search of some Kiss merchandise, I'd find some really random stuff. But again, who cares? That doesn't have anything to do with the music. It shouldn't really affect, you know, anyone's opinion on them as a band. All it is, yeah, they have a lot of merchandise. What does that have to do with music? And the final common complaint that I usually hear is about either all of the members of Kiss or just Gene Simmons being an asshole. And like I said at the beginning of this video, I'm gonna talk about some particular shit that Gene has said in the video that I make after this, the next video. But I will say, it has nothing really to do with the band's music. This is just like what I was saying in my video called "Should a Musician's Personality or Views Affect Your Opinion on Their Music?" It really shouldn't. I even mentioned Gene Simmons in that video when he was saying that he has no sympathy for depressed people or drug addicts. Was it a stupid thing to say? Hell yeah. But what does that have to do with the band's music? It has nothing to do with the band's music. You can still listen to the music and not really like them as a person. That's really where I stand with Gene Simmons, and I'll explain more about that in the next video. But the point is, like I said in the video I mentioned earlier, it has nothing to do with the band's music. That's all I really have to say. Kiss is an alright band. They're an alright hard rock band. Not exactly my favorite, but certainly a band I can enjoy listening to from time to time. So here's the point in this video where I ask you, the viewer, what's wrong with Kiss? Please be rational when leaving your thoughts and opinions in the comment section below, and have a great day. I'm Shades, and I will see you next time.